Namaste. This is Yoga Therapy Podcast, and I'm your host, Shira, yoga teacher, yoga therapist, and Ayurvedic wellness educator. In these conversations with experts in the field of yoga therapy, you'll find out what it is and how it can help you and your loved ones to reclaim well-being. We'll touch on physical as well as mental health, physiology, emotions, women's health, spiritual well-being, goddesses, and self-development in the fullest sense. Listening to another story can change ours, so thank you for showing up, and let's begin this journey together. Hello everyone. So today I'm doing another solo, and I'm talking about yoga therapy, what it is, what the training involves, how we become yoga therapists, what it means to be certified or registered, and the two different associations that we have now in the world that register and certify us to be therapists. Okay, so let's just get straight down to it. What is yoga therapy? So everyone asks this, or people just assume that something, but we don't know quite what it is. So I'm just going to say yoga therapy empowers and supports individuals to manage their own health using the principles of yoga and applying a range of yoga practices developed within a professional therapeutic relationship. Ill health and chronic injury are often compounded by multiple contributing factors. And for this reason, yoga therapy engages a holistic approach to assist the individual's health. And this will usually encompass the well-being of the whole person and focusing on the condition, the issue, the challenge. Okay, the tools of yoga therapy may use postures, breathing, hand gestures, the mudras, relaxation, mindfulness is a big part of it. Meditations can be given, or even dietary advice if we're specialized in that. Lifestyle counseling and self-development guidance if we have experience in that. And yoga therapy works with these different layers. So when we have a client, so the first session is usually a big intake. That's really important. We talked with Tyler last week or 2 weeks ago about this, how essential that is to have an understanding of why someone comes to you. So that's the first thing you ask is, how can I help you? Or what is your story? Or tell me what brings you here. So that way we understand what is the main factor they have come for, what has pushed them forward. And as we start to ask more questions, we find out what the underlying issues are. Maybe not straight away, maybe we need a few sessions for this, but we uncover those layers. So the layers, as I've said before, are first the physical body, obviously. So when things have manifested here, they are already usually the crisis point of the body. If it's come from a psycho or social factors, emotional factors, it's a long process. It's probably chronic. When it is chronic, it's something that's been going on for a long time before it actually developed into a physical symptom. The next layer is our physiology. So emotional, energetic, breath, hormones, everything that has to do with relational movement, changes that affect us within days and hours. Okay, and that can play towards manifesting into a physical issue if it's long term, if it's chronic. Okay, so we say that the physiological body, or the breath body, we call it in yoga, because you can really affect your physiology through breathing. The breathing is, the center of breathing is in the brain, is right on top of the emotional brain. So, and emotions trigger hormones, and therefore working with the breath, working with our emotions, we bring that physiology back into homeostasis, that calm stage and feeling. And then we have the mental body, our thoughts, everything that we take in through the senses goes and filters through that mind. So are we overwhelmed mentally? Do we think a lot? Is there rumination? Is there a lot of stress on the mental level? So we ask all these questions as well to see, why have they come? Is it pain? Or is it postural improvement? Is it joint health, stress relief, emotional balance, relaxation, improving sleep or energy, mental well-being? So we ask all that to get a picture of why or what. Maybe there are several things people want to change. And then we go down and ask into, so everyone makes their own formula, their intake. The part of the process of our training was to make this intake, use it in our classes and the lessons, and then adapt it as we went through the months of creating this thing. And you would hear other people's questions, and that would help you to improve yours, or to maybe totally eradicate some things and replace it with other questions which are more effective. So one of the things I found very effective is asking people on a scale from 1 to 10, how is their social network or their support network, their energy levels, their contentment scale, their mood scale, and their daily stress. So finding these things out also gives a good picture of what is their life like. And then asking people how they sit, how they walk, what is their daily activity, what is their work, their occupational habits, because this gives a good clue of what they're doing with their body. The body again affects physiology. Physiology affects the mind. The mind, if we get into certain patterns, will affect our psyche, what we believe about ourselves and what we value or start not to value because of these other layers. And so it's like I read out before, it's very holistic. We're looking at everything. And that's why it's very effective. And we use a broad range of tools. So most yoga therapists are also coaches or have backgrounds as nurses or psychotherapists or psychologists, physiotherapists. There's such a wide range now because these people are so motivated to help others that we keep collecting more and more tools and ways to work with these different bodies. And it's very vast. You can imagine how vast it is. So to be certified as a yoga therapist, and to do one of these trainings, the trainings themselves are between 800 hours. Well, some of them are less, some of them are 500, but I think 800 should be a minimum personally, because it's a lot of information. And like I just said, we're covering so much ground. Of course, we ask people if they're seeing any other health providers. We ask how long their symptoms are, what else might be affecting their personal lives, how strongly this affects these symptoms that they have, affects their daily life and their relationships. All these layers, all these parts and aspects of ourselves have to be considered. So the training should be at least, I think, 800 hours or more. So some of them are 1,000. But even before we do the 800 hours, you should be a yoga teacher since a certain number of years, at least have taught for 1,000 hours, which is also very minimal, because it gives you an idea of different bodies, different minds. You've had more experience to see what those yoga practices do. So when we say yoga therapy, it doesn't mean you're doing only yoga poses, because yoga, for people who practice yoga since a long time, involves the breathing, the meditation, the mindfulness, withdrawing the senses, putting our hands in different gestures, and different seated positions or standing positions can be just as effective if we're trying to correct posture or improve physiology. So it doesn't have to be these amazing poses that you see some people in. We don't even go there in yoga therapy unless that's what the person wants to move towards, but then it's not usually therapy, it's more ego. So what other areas might people feel stressed in? Is their work, family, personal, or other career? So we ask all these things, and these two associations that are now international registry boards are the International Association of Yoga Therapists and the Australasian Association of Yoga Therapists. So these two certify and then register their members once they've gone through the program. So the program is usually some study at home or online, and then the rest, the theory, for example, and then the rest we do in class with mentors and teachers. So the training I did was with the Enlightened Events from Australia, and we had 5 modules and we had 4 different teachers and mentors, and 2 of those teachers were also psychotherapists. So we got a lot of training in counseling, in knowing our scope of practice, which is really important, because I was working as a yoga therapist before before this training. I'd done another training of 400 hours, 450 hours, but I hadn't gotten any training in counseling skills. It was more on the job kind of, what do you call this? Not having my scope of practice and understanding counseling skills and how to listen to a person and ask the right questions so that feels safe enough to speak and open up and uncover what could be the underlying root, because that's what we want to get to. Not that we're going to work with that straight away, obviously, because that's not a good idea. We want to work first with those issues that they feel are too much or the biggest burden at the moment, the most prominent. And then slowly, as they build more confidence or feel that that is shifting, we can move into more subtle and root cause of imbalances. So with the Enlightened Events, our training was, the first part was foundational principles of yoga therapy, understanding the basis of, for example, we use in Ayurveda a lot the cooling and the heating principles. So you could call it the inflammation or bringing back down to homeostasis, alkaline and acid, this kind of activity in the body. So we talk about that a lot and how you would apply different. So a person comes in with 2 different people come in with the same issue, but the cause is different. So say it's depression. One could come in with depression because of something happened physically, they had an injury, they haven't been able to work for more than a year. And then they went into a state of depression, obviously, especially if you associate your identity with your work. So for them, you want to work differently. You would choose different practices. You would start from another area than you would for someone who is in a state of depression before, and then their physical health deteriorates because they're not looking after themselves. And so for them, you would do a totally different practice. Maybe you would use some of the practices the same, but you would structure it differently, or the focus would be different. So there's so much you can do because yoga has so many tools, and then you use the Ayurvedic principles and the philosophy, and then you can just make this huge smorgasbord for people. But we don't do that. We keep it simple because we also want people to succeed in this therapy. So we just try and stick to more is less and less is more. So we give people just a small practice. We ask them what they can realistically do. If you can only have 5 to 10 minutes a day, that's great. And we give you a practice that is only 5 to 10 minutes. And according to the time you have. So if you don't have time in the morning, but only in the evening, we apply that. So then you use those principles from the foundational yoga therapy to change that practice, because I wouldn't give the same practice to that depressed morning if they only have time in the afternoon or the evening. It would be different to a morning practice. So the practices always change according to the individual, their needs, their abilities, their resources. So it's a very flexible, adaptable and feasible. So then the next module in our training was applied yoga therapy, module 1. So first we would have case studies and we would see how to work with them. We would apply them between ourselves, the students, and we would understand why we would choose something and not something else. We would do practices, feel the experiences, and then discuss them. So each time we were going a little deeper. Next was mindfulness-based yoga therapy and counseling skills. After that, we had applied yoga therapy, module 2, and then we had anatomy and biomedical foundations, and then a supervised practicum. So you see that as you go through, the person gets more and more understanding of how to apply all these things. So I do think that it's important to do these trainings slowly because there's a lot of information and you can only take in a certain amount. So the good thing was we got all of it sent home. We could overlook it, read it, apply it, try it again. So what else would I like to talk about? Yeah, what we asked during an intake is very thorough. We tried to find out, so not just the history of your medical history and your family's medical history, but also yoga history or lifestyle habit history, all these things. There's so many aspects. Then we ask people about their diet and how they eat and what times they eat. Are they regular eaters? Because again, we're thinking in Ayurvedic terms, it's digestion is the foundation of health. Okay, now finally Western medicine is starting to get that, which it's a Hippocratic oath. Food is your medicine and let medicine be your food. That is the basis of health. So it's really important how to find out how people eat, what their digestion is like, how they feel after eating, how they eliminate their meals, and how many meals do they have? Is it regular? How much water? All these things add up. So this is just for physical and physiology. Then you want to find out about sleep. Sleep hours, is it broken, disturbed? Do they have a regular routine? What are their dreams like? Dreams also, if you study dreams a little. So I've been studying dreams since I was a kid. So for me, that it gives big clues to the person's character or disposition, their Ayurvedic constitution, which helps me then understand again how they got out of balance on certain layers of their being. Again, then we go do a body assessment. We feel the joints and ask them where they have pain and check out the limbs and the joints attached to those areas of pain and issue. We look at their breath and their breathing, how deep it is, how regular, how many breaths a minute. Is it erratic, slow, fast? Do they hold the breath in or do they hold the breath out? So all these things we look at. Then we look at their physical constitution, the body size, Ayurvedic. Are they Pitta, Vata, Kapha? You can see it in the hair and the tongue, the skin color, the eyes. We also, if it's women we're working with, we want to know about their menstruation. It's very important to understand a woman's menstruation. If you don't take that into consideration, you really can't help a woman who has any kind of physical or physiological issues, because that is the basis of her body building structures. Okay, and that gives a lot of clues to which energies, which how could you call this, what is causing the imbalance. So is it physical, is it mental, is it physiological, is it psychological? All these things disturb the menstrual cycle. And because the menstrual cycle is about rhythm, is about being in tune with yourself. So we wouldn't have menstrual problems if we could be attuned to ourselves and honor ourselves and take the time for self-care. So a lot of menstrual disturbances or imbalances are just due to not having that time or not knowing what is right for our body. and our constitution. And then, of course, we ask about other things like indigestion, kidney, bladder. Do they have hernias, ulcers? All these kinds of things are obviously asked about. And when they have pain, we look at, is there color? Is there swelling? What kind of level of pain is there? Does it get aggravated? And if so, by what? Is it by position, temperature? So all this gives clues. Then we have like a big picture of the person and what is upsetting them, what is aggravating them. Then we know, is it the heating or the cooling that they need? Is it the evening time or the morning time that they need to change certain things? Is it in the food? So we look at many, many aspects, and that's why it's so effective. I've seen people coming into the clinic and they have issues their whole life and thought they would never, ever get rid of it. And it was last resort. This was when I was working in Berlin, especially. A lot of people coming in, and they'd heard that this clinic, you would come if no one else could help you. They were really a lot of desperate people, and that's sad to see people so desperate and turned away or not informed properly by doctors, or not given the benefit of the doubt that they're intelligent enough to understand what to do, or maybe the doctors don't know what it is. And then, yes, within, sometimes it took a year for some people if it was very chronic, but it would shift. Already in the months after starting, there would be shifts, and that's why they kept coming back. And just knowing that there's hope sometimes is enough to make people keep coming back. And that hope inspires, motivates, and that motivation changes your physiology, and that physiology effect changes your physical and mental body. Yeah, and so it's very powerful. I don't know if I can explain it any better than that, but I do want to just let people know that it is a pretty thorough training. And yes, there are people out there who are not trained properly and they call themselves yoga therapists, and that is dangerous. It's not good for the profession, and it's not good for the person who comes to see that professional or unprofessional person. So understanding also what we can do with yoga therapy is important. So it's mainly working with chronic illness and anything that is to do with mind. It's very effective. And psych, not that we're psychotherapists, but we can help a lot, because if you are a yoga therapist who has been doing yoga for a long time, you have undoubtedly worked with consciousness and the mind and the shadows of the mind and psych. And you know the emotional states that arise, and you've probably cultivated some skills of mindfulness and sublimating those emotional states into more empowering states. So then if you have that experience, you can guide others rather than just learning it. I've seen people who've learned many things, but they do not know how to teach it to someone else because they have not experienced or walked that path themselves. So this is also very important, to recognize that experience sometimes is more important than just knowing and education. Okay, so I hope that clarifies for a lot of you what yoga therapy is. And for those who are interested in becoming a yoga therapist, you can look at the website of IAYT, which is the International Association of Yoga Therapists, or yogatherapy.org.au, which is Australasian Association of Yoga Therapists. So both of these have programs that are accredited, that certify and register their members, so that you know that the training is authentic. It's taught by professional, not just professional, but knowledgeable and integral people, because there is a lot of now yoga therapy trainings that have just come out because it's a business. Like anything, it becomes an interest in the industry as soon as it's very interesting for a lot of people. So that's a shame, because it's also not quality trainings that are coming out because of it. So really do your research, find out by reviews, and get yourself to a good yoga therapist or a good training. So this is it for today. It's a short one because I am still plowing through my book. I'm nearly there, the last 6 pages, and I'm very excited. So thank you for being here. Have a wonderful day. No practice today. Just enjoy the day. Bye. So thank you everyone for staying to the end of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. I really love doing these talks with these amazing people. And if you want to know more, just take a look in the show notes. There's plenty of links and ways to connect with either the guest or myself. If you want to work with us or find out more about us, just check out the information in the show notes. So I hope you have a wonderful week, and you'll be hearing from me next week.